Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome to a new reaction, and this is, what if the Mongols conquered Japan by Alternate History Hub? So, a little while ago, I did a reaction to, another video made on a different channel made by the same creator, called Pointless Hub, and it was... Oh god, what was it? I'm completely forgetting now. Was it... No, I think it was about, Cowboys versus Aliens, wasn't it? Yep, that was it. Okay, good. But before he made that channel, he had, Alternate History Hub, and I've been a fan of Alternate History Hub for a lot longer. And watching, alternate history videos was very much one of the things that I guess I'd always been sort of a fan of history, just because, I liked steam trains, I liked, tanks and stuff like World War I and World War II, stuff like that. But looking at, alternate history videos was very much, one of the big things that made me actually, start learning about history and stuff like that, and I love, and honestly, watching these alternate history videos, which, it's far from the peak of alternate history YouTube. It used to be a much bigger phenomenon. But honestly, watching these videos is part of the reason I learn about these, these instances of what happened. Just because, oh, what if this went a different way? And it's sometimes oh, I didn't even know that happened in the first place. Let's learn about it. So, so any day you learn something new is a good day. Yeah, so what if the Mongols conquered Japan? I know they didn't. I know they invaded, at least from what I remember, they invaded twice, and each time their fleets were destroyed by, what was it, not monsoons, hurricanes or something like that. And I believe that's where the word kamikaze comes from, holy wind. Thinking about it, the Mongols, much bigger force. They probably could have, conquered it relatively easily. Though, you do have the excess strain of, logistics over a body of water. But, they did have all of China at the time, so... Though, I would think, they'd conquer Japan, but the biggest changes would come from, after they fell. Because, again, I know in China... Which dynasty was it that was created by the Mongols? Was it the Han or the Ming? Well, I know one of the Chinese dynasties was founded by the Mongols. So, but actually, wait, I'm thinking when the Mongols did try invading Japan, did the emperor have any power, or was it the shogunate at the time? I honestly can't remember. I think it probably would be the emperor. So either way, the emperor would probably be, somebody of Mongol descent after that. But okay, that being said, I'm going to stop speculating here and actually see what he says in the video. So yeah, let's get this thing started. So of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because over 3/4 of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my main goal is to hopefully hit 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Japan was saved by bad weather, twice. A divine wind they called a kamikaze. Kublai Khan threw everything he had against the shogunate, and his failure would lay the foundations of Japan as we know it today. This invasion was so impactful that it redefined Japanese politics, culture, and religion forever. In the late 14th century, the biggest naval operation in human history, carrying over 150,000 Mongol horse archers, clashed against an elite force of samurai, honoring the Bushido Code. The Great Khan versus the Shogun, an epic encounter cut short by a raging typhoon. Hold up, spot the lie on that last bit. Which part is off?
Did they ever actually hit land? Or god, oh god, wait a second, what? Was it... Could it have been that there was never actually a storm or anything like that? What's the lie? I want... What is it?
The century? The claim this amphibious assault dwarfed D-Day? Well, plot twist. It's all wrong. The Mongol invasions were barely Mongolian. Maybe 3% at most.
Oh.
But the brand was too catchy to ditch. Japanese chroniclers and YouTubers alike know the Sino-Goryeo-Mongol invasions don't exactly roll off the tongue, so this invasion goes by a different name. And it's drenched in propaganda for a reason. Beneath the inflated numbers and myths lies a gripping story that reshaped Japan, an external force crushed by nature, yet burrowed deep into its soul.
Okay, so it wasn't just the Mongols again. It was one of their Chinese descendants. Really? Okay, interesting.
The real Ghost of Tsushima is the invisible enemy the islanders never stopped fighting. One that consumed and transformed them from within. That's why this alternate scenario is so compelling. A successful invasion rewrites Japan's DNA, potentially unraveling it entirely.
Oh god, no, not the inbred samurai.
But before we erase anime, let's rewind. Okay, so when I say Mongols, chances are you're thinking in one of three camps. Camp A, you don't know much besides them being a bunch of horse boys who like to throat sing and conquer everything. Camp B, Khan fanboys, the Romabu equivalent here, convinced that the Mongols were the world's ultimate war machine. And Camp C, folks who wield the Mongol boogeyman to hype how badass their group was for stopping the unstoppable.
Well, I'm actually part of Group D, the person that just, took the story at complete face value and thought it was, historical fact.
You know who you are. Japan would undoubtedly fall into the latter, with arguably the strongest case alongside the Mamluks. And to that I say, in your dreams. If you look at the tribes Temujin unified and how far he got them, and I mean really look, what you find is the equivalent of the Normans conquering all of Europe. I mean, that would be like if Cuba conquered all of the Americas. The Mongols were way better at conquering, but both people followed the same fate. Either kicked out of the lands they conquered, or in the best case scenario,
just
integrated
converted
into the population.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan's grandson didn't just choose the integration option, he furiously pursued it. Seeing the writing on the wall, thanks to his badass mom, Kublai Khan was ready to sever all connections to his Mongol ancestry in pursuit of the mandate of heaven. His dream of the Yuan dynasty was busy work, and it required him to kowtow to all the different religions and cultural groups within China, establishing himself as the supreme emperor. Sure, some generals and customs stayed Mongolian, but he walked and talked Han. You get the picture. The wider Mongol...
Okay, I mean, I knew that, that did happen, like, I knew that happened, the whole story of the Mongol Empire basically fractured once he died, and that there was, a Chinese dynasty formed from, like, one of the remnants. I didn't know that, I didn't know that that the cultural, I don't know, absorption, if you call it, whatever you'd call it, was like, so personal. Okay.
Mongol Empire was his only in name. Not that he cared, since it was stretching itself way too thin. Internally he was doing alright. But he still had the southern song, resisting his mandate in the, south. Duh. Kublai knew he couldn't get his foot off the gas, since the moment he did, China would do what China does best, and implode in on itself.
Oh. Okay, wait a second. I was going to... It's like, how does the history of the entire world, I guess, go? China's whole again, then it broke again. Okay, honestly, just on that note, like, how long do you think it will be until China breaks apart again? Because it's been a while since it's broken apart.
This video was sponsored by, well, you. Stick with me here. So, I have a lot of ideas for videos, and like 80% of them would just bomb on this channel. If I could just upload whatever and whenever I wanted, and it'd have no effect on the algorithm, I would do it. But sadly, that is not how this platform works. If less people watch your videos, YouTube just kills your channel. At the same time, I want these dumb videos to exist. Like, I had an idea imagining a world where the American buffalo just randomly respawned in America with their pre-19th century populations. Like, imagine that. Instead of there being just a few thousand bison today, one day, those vast herds just poof back into existence. Imagine how much that would devastate the modern United States. Millions of bison, enough to black out the prairie, just retaking the Midwestern plains.
I'd imagine a lot of people would die, but what does this have to do with your quote-unquote sponsorship? Are these, like, Patreon exclusive? Are they members videos? What's going on here?
Would anyone care about this? I don't know.
I mean,
but I do know
I
that
think
there
it'd be
would be
pretty
a section
fun.
of the audience that would, and they deserve full production value for that too. That's something that can only really be
there you
done
go.
through Patreon. So yeah, this was a Patreon plug. But wait, there are so many unique videos on Patreon and now memberships that you've probably never seen.
God,
More niche topics, things that just wouldn't fly on the main channel. If that's something that sounds good to you, then, check it out. We got polls. You can vote for videos. It's pretty fun. Okay, back to the actual video. What he needed was an external foe, a jewel which previous dynasties lost long ago. Ideally, someone whose downfall would also contribute to success in the south. Japan fit every part of that bill. Its pirates were harassing shipments, merchants were trading with the Song, and should he be able to conquer them, his legitimacy would go through the roof. Based on the stories he heard, Japan was a place filled with riches and obedient servants. I guess the grass is always greener on the other side.
As it always is, isn't it?
Since these were the same stories the Romans were told about Britain. But while the Celts left Caesar
Of course.
disappointed, the Japanese would leave Kublai furious. In 1266, he sent some envoys who the Japanese didn't even bother responding to. Kublai kept rolling for that critical charisma hit in 1268 and 1271, but I guess that failed, since the Japanese literally beheaded the envoys. Wow. A few decades earlier, the entirety of Iran was wiped off the map, because a governor decided to give a Mongol emissary a shave. So Kublai ordered his Korean vassals to build a fleet. Korea did, but not before starting a rebellion and telling the Japanese about it.
Okay. Again, like, he's emperor, of the Mongol Empire and, China, so... But, again, this is really reminding... So I'm really thinking, so this is the 1200s. I really want to see this play out as, like, in like, the version of, like, an after-action report in like, Crusader Kings, like, 3 or something like that. If you don't know what that is, like, people make, like, either forum posts or, like, videos, like, talking about, like, the history of, like, a game or a nation or a character, like, whenever they play one of those games. They can be so much fun. But honestly, this sort of logic, it hits me exactly like one of those, like, after-action reports.
Snitches. The first invasion in 1274 was very much the appetizer. A fleet of about 800 ships carried about 20,000 troops. A Korean fleet, mostly carrying Chinese and Korean troops. But fine, Kublai was still calling himself Mongolian, and there were a few horse boys in there, I guess, so let's just call this a Mongol invasion. Why not? After taking a few islands, the invaders reached Hakata Bay, the only place where you could land an army and clash with the local clans. As the invaders' ship neared, Japanese onlookers recoiled in horror. Scores of captain women from Tsushima and Iki were strung up on the bows, ropes threaded through holes punched in their hands, used as a human shield. Ironically, it was the Japanese who fielded more mounted archers, who decimated these attackers with their sharpshooting. Chinese engineers deployed...
Ooh. Wait, so who had the human shields?
Japanese onlookers recoiled in horror.
Okay, yeah, so it was the invading force that had human shields. Oh god, that's disgusting.
Archers, who decimated these attackers with their sharpshooting. Chinese engineers deployed grenades, which were pretty ineffective. Using their sheer numbers, the Mongols pushed the Japanese back several miles, driving them inland toward the Mizuki fortress. But by nightfall, progress had stalled. The Mongol commander took an arrow to the face, supplies dwindled, and as the Japanese resorted to night attacks on their warships, the decision was made to pull back. What happened next is pretty debatable. Some sources claim a sudden typhoon hit the bay as the Mongols were sailing back home and destroyed a portion of their fleet, but one, that claim is extremely questionable due to the legends that were started later, and two, this happened outside typhoon season, so I kinda doubt this.
Oh god, I mean, like, again, I said before, I'm just kind of took one of those things as like, just took whatever, like the two invasions stopped by winds, just on face value. The fact that there might have not even been a storm at all, and they just stopped the invasions just themselves, or at least the first one. Wow, okay. Huh.
Either way, the attack was over. Divine wind or not, the Japanese defenders prevailed, despite their heavy casualties, and the Mongols, but really Chinese and Koreans, were left back on the mainland. Kublai kept making threats, sending more messengers in 75 and 79, and heads continued to roll. The Great Khan was kind of looking more like a desperate ex, but by this point his conquest of China was complete, and Mongol heritage was completely tossed aside. Now he could focus his entire might across the Channel waters. Like the Spanish, French, and Germans after him, he was obsessed with the idea of conquering this nearby island, the last thorn in his side, the jewel in his crown. To do so, he leaned on his Korean vassals again, this time also mobilizing the newly conquered southern Chinese. Just imagine that. This would be like if Napoleon told Spain to give him an armada right after he, oh wait, never mind. While the Tang were the inventors of paper.
I mean, I can see the logic. I mean, you now have this, vast, your territory is now massively expanded with new resources, and, the people there are not too happy with you given that they were just conquered, so you take whatever might you can from them so that it's harder for them to rise up and rebel from you. But with that being said, like, why would they just automatically give it to him if they had literally just been conquered?
Paper currency, the Yuan dynasty skyrocketed its use. Here, the emperor drove up inflation by printing a shit ton of cash in order to finance his little dream.
Oh, geez, okay, I can't see this going poorly at all.
But how big was the second invasion, really? Pretty big. Some claim that the Korean fleet had 900 ships, carrying 40,000 troops, while the Chinese fleet was made up of 3,500 ships, carrying 100,000 troops. Now, without a doubt, these numbers are grossly exaggerated. Still, we are talking colossal numbers here. But that being said, these are not Admiral Yi-level ships. Most ships, especially in...
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, man, I mean, like, I know that, again, like, you have the Korean turtle ships, and they were, like, very good at, attacking and defending. But, like, I think they were very much after this. Like, actually, when were Korean turtle ships? Like, this is still in, like, the 1200s here. Like, late 1200s. Early 15th century. Yeah, okay. Yeah, still a ways off from that. Okay.
The Southern Fleet were hastily refitted river barges. As for the fighters, that...
Oh! Okay, yeah. So even worse than I thought. Okay.
At 3% Mongolian is kinda 1% at best. This was not some Mongol horde. These were substandard fighters carried on substandard ships coming from two different locations, and this time they sailed during typhoon season.
Okay, so now the typhoon actually destroying the entire fleet, yeah, now I can see it actually happening.
There was nothing Mongolian about this operation, but if I said, what if the Yuan invasions were successful, you wouldn't be watching this video. So what about the Japanese? The epic katana-wielding samurai. The shogunate was basically two different governments ruling over a bunch of clans. But the first invasions and continuous emissaries did give them such a scare that they spent a majority of their budget building a seawall, preparing for another attack. Things were close the first time around, and despite their victory, those human meat shields, poison arrows, and literal bombs gave the Japanese a real scare.
Yeah, because I mean, like, they didn't work the first time, but the thought of what if they worked the next time, that would definitely be a bit of a thinker, a bit terrifying on an existential level.
They knew the Yuan were coming. Hell, they even knew where they would strike, but they had no idea when. Soldiers spent years on guard duty, staring at the waves while they hit the shore. Their entire families moved to the western provinces. Hundreds of shrines were built and priests prayed around the clock, cursing their enemies. I'm serious, they had a system where at least one guy had to be praying while the others ate and slept. Then, the moment they were
just round-the-clock worship. Okay, interesting. That's some Warhammer 40k logic there, right there.
We're all waiting for finally came. On June 1281, the Korean fleet, eager to gain glory, left way before the rendezvous point and followed the same path as the first invasion. Only this time, they met a much larger force behind thick stone walls. For over a month.
Geez, that's what you get for being predictable. And they said that and thinking back, they said they chose that, they chose that location because it was the only place where they could land and then fight the enemies. But what's the logic there? Because you'd think you'd want to land, prepare yourself, get ready, and then march in, hopefully, catching them unawares or unprepared or something like that. Why would you want to instantly land and then attack? What's the thought process there?
They couldn't even breach the wall. The deck of their ships bombarded by arrow volleys.
Again.
The disorganized force of samurai, most of which were there only for the money, managed to hold ground and even rolled up at night, boarding enemy ships and cleaning out their decks. By late July, the Southern Armada finally showed up, swelling the invasion force. To the defenders, the sea filling up with thousands of ships must have been a sight to see. But what came next was
sight to see.
was even more astonishing. The combined force clashed with the defenders in mid-August, barely making gains, and then suddenly, 2 days after the main battle, Kamikaze did show up. This time, nature did play its hand, and it obliterated the Yuan fleet. While it was anchored too. Ships smashed into each other as the chains they were bound with turned them into death traps. Tens of thousands drowned or washed up on shore, only to be captured and enslaved.
Oh god, that's even worse than I thought. I thought it would have been it was just such a bad storm that it happened in open sea. But no, they were at anchorage. Oh, they smashed each other to pieces. Oh.
By some estimates, 2/3 of the entire force were lost in a single night. For the defenders, their prayers were answered. The gods intervened, and this moment would be mythologized for centuries. The Yuan invaders weren't around for long, but while they were the embodiment of evil. Tough, merciless opponents who were defeated by a combination of preparation, courage, and divine intervention. Kublai was furious, and started actually planning another invasion.
Wait, really?
Third time's the charm, right? But not long after, he faced disaster in Vietnam and Java too.
Why is it always Vietnam that's the problem?
Then he lost his wife, his heir, and turned to drinking. Neither he nor Japan were ever the same again. But what if he succeeded? What if the divine...
Oh yeah, I forgot this was an alternate history video. Right, okay. I was just excited about learning the actual history of the event.
wind that showed up to save Japan never showed up. Things are about to get ugly. History really delivered on this epic clash. However, we did miss out on what could have been possibly the most Pyrrhic victory of all time.
Oh, geez.
Since both sides survived, we have a lot of texts describing the situation, and both Chinese and Japanese chroniclers were describing that August situation as absolutely dire. Both sides were exhausted. No rice was being sold at stalls, neither side really wanted to be there. It just sucked.
No side wanted it to be there. Jeez, okay. Does that make it worse for the attackers or the defenders? I honestly can't decide.
For the Japanese, their concept of a unified Japan was as foreign as Greece was for the Athenians. They were protecting lands far from their own, in the hope of trading some Chinese ears for horse, or better yet, land. The morale for the Chinese and Koreans was even worse. After all, they were both recently conquered by a foreign invader who was trying to fit in. So let's say the typhoon never strikes. Don't expect a Yuan steamroll. Both invasions crawled, struggling to even take small islands like Toshima and Iki, despite clear advantages. Besides, they chose to sail in the middle of typhoon season. Do we really just enter God mode and stall the weather for a full year?
Yeah, honestly, the best I could think of, again, and again, I was going to make a comparison to, like, the United States' planned to invade Japan during World War II, but, like, the culture was just so different. But at the same time, like, again, you're dealing with, like, with fighting forces, like, on both sides that don't want to be there, while, like, bad weather, like, horrible morale, it just... You know, I always hear, like, in videos like this, the term meat grinder thrown around. But it's not even a meat grinder. It's like you throw the steak on the ground, just have it stepped on by, like, a marching army. It's just, like, just destroyed.
No. I mean, I could, but I'm not. Especially when there's such a much easier solution to this. And it gives us the same effect. Have the southern makeshift fleet arrive at the exact time as the Korean one in June. In our timeline, the moment the two forces converged, the invaders started seeing actual real results. Now, this doesn't mean that the Japanese collapse all of a sudden. Oh no. Evidence shows that as the divine wind was putting the armada in the washing machine, a sizable reinforcement was making its way from the east. After all, the shogunate had a clear answer to the Yuan question. The initial brunt was met by samurai volunteers who were manning the walls with nothing to do for months. We could expect an actual defending force that would come in to reinforce in far better condition with superior leadership.
Yeah.
So what happens? June. Toshima and Iki Islands fall, and the wall at Hakata Bay is overwhelmed by a swarm of Yuan forces. Normally, the amphibious assault is the hardest part, followed by a rush for the countryside. But in this case, the next line of defense would be the powerful Mizuki Fortress, supported by natural choke points like river crossings and the hilly terrain of northern Kyushu.
Yeah, that's the one thing never been to Japan, but the one thing I do know about it is it's a very mountainous country. So you have, like, the terrain is basically nothing but the defender's advantage there.
The shogunate would bankrupt itself on this decade-long project of fortifying the island, and that would certainly pay off here. Chinese engineers would be more than equipped to handle these challenges, as long as there was an adequate supply line maintained with Korea, but unfortunately for them, you can't hold back the divine wind. Not in this region, and not during the season. In mid-August, the majority of the ships are still destroyed. But by this point, a significant portion of the island, mainly the western portion of it, is in Yuan hands. Not all ships are lost, and crucially, most of the invasion force is safely ashore, but still, not a great situation for the Chinese.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm wondering where this is going to go. Like, is Japan going to be fully conquered? Or is it going to kind of become a thing where, like, okay, actually, yeah, three routes of where this could go, just from, like, history of other videos that he's made. Either one, Japan does get conquered, but again, very Pyrrhic victory. they only conquer like the couple of islands, and then maybe use that as a staging ground for future invasions later on. Or 3, they conquer the islands, but due to being cut off and also just not wanting to be, part of the invasion, they actually make their own independent sort of like kingdom or something there that it just kind of becomes its own thing and is eventually taken over by Japan proper? I don't know.
This is when guerrilla warfare kicks in.
Oh, yeah.
As silent bands of samurai pick foragers off one by one. Both sides are heavily invested in this fight, and neither can pull back now. The shogun calls in more and more fresh troops to move to the west, while Kublai Khan ferries fresh troops and supplies to Kyushu. As the fight drags on and the food supplies dwindle, both sides begin to face the consequences of their actions.
Pyrrhic
Samurai
victory, here we
who
go.
previously refused the call are now in active rebellion against a shogun who is starving them in order to defend other clans. Southern China and Korea just have enough of the Khan's demands. Corruption sets in as the quality of the ship and troops deteriorate more and more. Through sheer numbers and at the expense of the greater Yuan domain, the defenders are pushed back, losing the strategic strait connecting the island to Honshu. Yuan vessels do block the straits and suffocate the gateway to Japan, with mounting casualties and hunger, combined with the ruthlessness of the Yuan, who raze cities refusing to collaborate. It's not long before certain clans just defect to their cause. Clans who feel that the shogunate has abandoned them, or that their cause is absolutely hopeless. Remember here, in this alternate timeline, the gods have not intervened, and with each captured city, the Yuan march hundreds of meat shields towards the next. After the loyal Shimazu clan is defeated and their capital Satsuma is turned to rubble, shockwaves are sent throughout the island. For the Japanese, who have never been invaded by a foreign foe, the conquest of Kyushu is a major psychological blow. Minor clans like Ito and Aso are given an opportunity to rise above their station, becoming Yuan vassals. The Yuan paused their campaign for the winter, but around April the following year, the war continues on. Japan raises new defenses and prepares an even greater force, but this time, the typhoon threat is far smaller. Casualties, defections, guerrilla warfare, famine, disease, destruction, rinse, and repeat. Historical records in our timeline note that Kublai appointed a Chinese general, Hung Chai-chiu, as commander of Japan, ahead of the invasion.
Oh, okay,
Essentially,
did he? Okay.
he was a governor-in-waiting. In this alternate timeline, we can imagine this Yuan governor now declaring Kyushu as a province. He might send messengers to the Japanese imperial court in Kyoto and the shogunate in Kamakura with an ultimatum: submit to Mongol rule or face the same fate as Kyushu. Refusal will be madness. Only this time, he's sending heads instead of receiving them. Those of the leading clans tasked with defending the province. Hojo Tokimune's government proclaims they will never surrender the homeland of the gods. They call on every last samurai and peasant to resist the barbarian pirates. It's a very 300-style rallying cry. Madness? This is Japan.
I don't know why I don't know why I find that so funny.
This relentless cycle of fueling the fire doesn't stop while Kublai Khan lives. Japan is his obsession, like Xerxes, consuming most of his resources and focus. It may take another year, or two, or maybe even a decade, but nothing but unconditional surrender can stop this juggernaut.
Okay, so why do I get the feeling, again, this entire section of the video is called Pyrrhic Victory, so why do I get the feeling that, oh yeah, by the end of his life, he will have conquered Japan, but the second he dies, everything just explodes?
Now, normally this isn't the end of the world. Korea faced a similar fate and managed to come out on top. Only this isn't Korea. In our world, the invasions gave Japan an existential crisis. Its leadership saw the failure in its political system and bankrupted itself, building walls and shrines for protection. Families were moved west, and feudalism was bootstrapped in order to have a small, standing army. Similarly to how the Vikings accelerated feudalism in Europe. The shaky balance between the two seats of government were shattered. The emperor became a figurehead, with the shogun now the one truly in charge. These paranoid policies led to a desire to climb the ladder, and the Sengoku Jedi period began.
I've heard of Shingaku. Never heard. Is Jedi an actual word? What?
Thousands of disenfranchised samurai saw their fortune decline as power went into the hands of the clergy, courtiers, and moneylenders. I know it's hard to imagine, but this Game of Thrones style madness between Tokugawa and Nobunaga is even more chaotic in 1281. What that means is that in this alternate timeline, the Yuan dynasty finds it difficult to get an unconditional surrender. Instead, Kublai Khan kind of finds himself in an endless game of whack-a-mole. The solution to that game is very Mongolian, which is burn them all.
Yeah,
the Yuan will always eventually fall. The pathetic successors of Kublai Khan, followed by the Black Death which originated in China, basically guaranteed that. In fact, having him spend so much resources on Japan would probably move that time frame forward a few decades.
What did I literally say? The second he dies, it's just going to blow up because he spent so much. He's spent so much time, money, resources, men, supplies.
Leading to an earlier rise of the Ming. All in all, for most of Asia, the consequences are pretty minimal. Indochina and Java don't get invaded, and the Yuan fall a bit sooner, but that's no big deal. For Japan, though, ouch. There are no proud myths or legends to unite the people. No cultural or political renaissance. Clans are fractured by Yuan manipulation. Resources are depleted and carried off to Beijing. But most of all, I think there's going to be a Khwarezmian or Hungarian level population decline. Anywhere from 50 to 75% as a whole, with huge contrasts between one province and another. While this invasion preceded many samurai customs, many believed in that last stand mentality, as evidenced by the Tsushima garrison, which fought to the last man, with its commander even committing seppuku. Some clans bend, while others break. Holy sites, key castles, and anything that can inspire resistance is torn down. Only the Yuan could pull this off, which means that after they collapse, half a century later, there is no danger of the Ming ever attempting a sequel. Given enough time, Japan could end up piecing itself back together. Just think of how the Mongol invasions of the Rus eventually led to the establishment of Russia. This is a comparison filled with similarities, both with a very long and bloody process. In our timeline, Japan's isolation actually saved it from the Black Plague. But here, it receives a horrific
from the Black Plague
gift.
as well, okay.
And because in this alternate timeline they are Yuan vassals for about 40 years, they barely get to reap the benefits of the Silk Road. No matter how you look at it, the best case scenario for Japan here is it being an isolated, divided, and battered island, one with a recovering population and shattered cultural identity by 1510. This is not a unified state, mind you. This is just a reset back to where it was before Kublai even showed up.
God, and man, I'm thinking, it's like, you know, the closest connection I have to Japanese history is like what little anime I've watched, you know, covering it, and like games like Europa Universalis 4, where you actually like play during that time period, and like, you know, a good portion of the gameplay is actually unifying Japan and stuff like that. But like, man, just all that time essentially wasted. And with no like unifying a history or something like that, you don't have anything to really latch onto for it to unify into a single country. So would it ever? And if that was the case, then it would be such it would be in such a like weakened point that would that lead it to being like colonized when the Europeans came knocking? Like, what would happen?
This is pretty bad news, considering that at best, Japan gets like 40 years before the Portuguese arrive.
Yeah,
What's
what
pretty
did I just
likely
say?
is that they are still in the middle of rebuilding by the time Europeans show up. In our timeline, the Portuguese and Dutch faced a unified Tokugawa shogunate, a wary, xenophobic Japan with a rigid hierarchy and robust population. But here they come to a miserable and divided island, one where Jesuits may be able to speak to friendly ears, and guns may be sold in plenty. The combination of Yuan persecution of the Japanese gods, failure of the priests to save their homeland, and overall horrible century following the invasion creates an environment where the people kinda need a savior. Or at the very least, they need an explanation for the suffering.
God, okay, talk about white saviors. Jeez, but only this time it's a bit more literal.
Some clans may reject the Jesuits, but others will welcome them with open arms. Far more than they did in our timeline. Speaking of arms, competing clans would bend over backwards to gain the favor of the Europeans. Being friends with the Europeans means getting hands on those boomsticks.
God, what is it? I literally, just a little while ago, I finished getting through Blue-Eyed Samurai, and that was a whole thing where, a major plot point was, them secretly sneaking guns into Japan. So it'd be even worse here.
And with Japan in chaos, we are talking about a series of far more devastating alternate wars. I can imagine the Portuguese, Dutch, Spanish, English, and French running their tentacles deep.
Oh.
Japan becomes a battleground where the clans act as pawns. By the end of the 16th century, the question isn't which part embraces the Europeans, it's which empire each province has decided to support.
Ooh.
Now, let's get even more specific here. In our timeline, Macau became a major trading post, followed by many others. Considering the Yuan devastation, especially in places like Kyushu and Tsushima, doesn't it kind of make sense for these natural harbors to become major trading outposts?
Yeah.
Old Yuan bases become pirate coves, and in the eyes of the daimos, the Portuguese are only doing them a favor by taking them out. Little do they know, or maybe they do and they just can't do anything about it, once the Europeans settle in, no Eastern Navy is ever gonna threaten them again.
Again, full-on colonization. Man, imagine that, an alternate history where, being conquered by the Mongols results in basically, Japan being colonized, and, depending on who actually did do the colonizing, may result in, the destruction of a quote-unquote pure Japanese race. From what little I know, for all it shows, Japan is very, for lack of a better word, racist when it comes to, interbreeding with other, races and stuff like that. So just having that be just possibly being just the default in this other alternate timeline is just, it's really weird to think about.
The Ming could roll up with 1,000 junk ships, and that's all that they would ever have.
Literal junk, yeah.
Junk. Within a century, the archipelago, once shielded by divine whims, is swept by another force. The sails of European ambition. Maybe Portuguese Tsushima becomes a hub for missionary work and arms dealing. Perhaps Dutch Kyushu transforms into a commercial fortress, defended by Protestant guns and Japanese mercenaries. I could see Spanish-backed Christian enclaves popping up in Shikoku and Honshu, flying crosses next to clan banners. Who knows, maybe if the timeline even gets wackier,
Whoa.
maybe we might see a Christian emperor propped up by the Jesuits, and also Iberian silver. Perhaps this Christian
Iberian
emperor
silver.
claims divine mandate in Kyoto, even as the true emperor languishes under house arrest and obscurity. This is a situation that no one could really stop if it happened. The Ming might bluster, but their naval expeditions are a distant memory. Their ships are outnumbered by the Europeans, and totally outgunned. In this alternate timeline, the Yuan destroyed Japan's cohesion, its identity, population, and industry. And now, this isn't a nation anymore, it's a board game. Every clan apiece, the Portuguese, Dutch, Spanish, and Jesuits, all taking a roll of the dice. And yet, this chaos does open a new can of worms. Who does win in Japan? How soon does Japan westernize? How do the Ming respond to Europeans building mini empires across the sea?
So thinking about it, if you follow the idea of a Western nation, a Western empire, eventually gaining control over all of Japan. I mean, they're obviously all very far away, but let's assume that if England still gets Australia, then you also have the Dutch East Indies. France kind of gets... So they all kind of do get close staging grounds to continue feeding on there. But then you also have, alternatively, you have... No, but then it's... Maybe England, just because? That's the best I could think of. And I don't know.
Do these colonial proxy wars spill into Europe itself, just like it did with America? If you think this video should have a sequel, become a patron and cast a vote.
I wish I had money.
Well, I'll leave it right here. This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
God, what a weird
before you go, one
concept.
More thing. So, you might have noticed that in the last year or so, videos have looked a bit different. There's a style inconsistency, things kind of feel off, and there's a reason for that. I have always been solo on this channel, done everything myself since the days of PowerPoint up until a year or so ago. To be blunt, I have a family now, I got kids, and along with a second channel that I still edit on, I couldn't do this all by myself. Making characters, assets, editing, all that jazz is just impossible for one guy. I needed a team. So this has been a transition period where I'm building that team, and it has gone I'm very happy that I have the people that I do. I have a very helpful right-hand man named Khan. Without good old Khan, you'd probably get a video 6 times a year, if that. Team building is a lot more difficult for me than I thought, and frankly, it's a whole new set of skills. Things slip through the cracks, or different visions happen, and those problems came to a head with the last video. It was just a mess. Oh my god. Audio levels were bad, the edit timing was off, everything just fell apart, and the fans really noticed. Quality was horrible, and frankly,
I haven't seen that one.
I'm ashamed. So, I took it down. Hell, the final straw was that this image that looked like AI was, well, AI. Yes, I know. How the fuck did that happen? So, the team has a series of editors, and it's been kind of a revolving door for years. Turns out, having people animate silly little figures is a hard thing to do. One of these editors got this image from an image service, and he did not know it was AI. Hell, it was probably because if you Google Byzantine Constantinople art, this is right on the front page. Hell, you can even buy this AI art piece online for $50. The internet is screwed. The editor didn't notice it was AI, and I should have noticed it was, but I didn't. And that's on me. I'm just like your parents sending you that Facebook slop. I don't like AI. I will never intentionally use it. The only reason it happened here is because I'm an idiot. But also, that mistake was representative of what was going on for a while. I've been letting Alternate History Hub slip up as I focused on other things in my life. I am clearly not MatPat, and I am not good at multitasking, so it's led to this. It's time to rebuild, gain the audience's trust back. Experimentation is over. Clearly the audience likes what they like, and so there will be no new art style changes that are scary or weird. I want the channel to go back to how it was a few years ago. Quick, snappy, and simple. If there is experimentation, it's going to be with the video topics themselves. So, yeah, Alt Hist Hub fell off? Oh fuck, is that a cliff?
Oh, okay. Well, again, maybe that's the reason why I kind of stopped watching them. I just wasn't getting pushed or something like that. Huh. But yeah, again, a very weird topic, and just again, I've imagined alternate histories in my head before, I've played more than enough, 4X games that, kind of allow me to live out the fantasy or something. But, like, nothing is ever perfect. None of them are, like, none of them ever get this nitty-gritty. And just the idea that you have this ruler that becomes so obsessed that it basically becomes the one thing, and how many times you've heard it before? A ruler, it gets so set on a single, target that they basically ruin everything else because of it. Again, this is why I love Alternate History Hub. Just, the thought process of what could actually happen. I love it. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.